Anyways, let's round things out with our movie review for the week, which is continuing our Hitchcock month. Is The Man Who Knew Too Much, and
And
we're
we are
actually
doing the. Oh, I'll let you.
okay.
Introduce
Yeah, and we're
this.
actually giving you a special treat and doing a twofer because Alfred Hitchcock made two movies by the same title, and I mean, the later one, the one okay, there's the first one that come out was in 1934, I believe,
4.
36.
Yeah,
Yeah, or yeah, 34, and then the second one to come out was in 1956.
correct.
And I think that kind of spoiler alert, I think the 56 one was just kind of like an updated remake of the first one.
Yeah, that's so when we were initially, coming up with the movies that we wanted to watch for our Hitchcock month,
Mm-hmm.
we saw A Man Who Knew Too Much. And the way it from the articles I read is like, oh well, the one from 56 was kind of completely kind of redone. It wasn't quite the same movie, but in reality, yeah, it is a remake of the one from 1934.
Mm-hmm.
And what's kind of unusual is though that he was at the forefront of both of them. He was in the driving chair of both of them.
Right, and I think, well, this is just speculation, but I think he just wanted to make an updated version because I mean, given the limitations of the 1930s, I think like I want to believe that he's like, I could have made this a little bit better. So he took it. So he just took advantage of like the new technologies that came out during the 50s.
Right. Well, and in his own words, he said that it was the initial one was the work of an amateur, whereas the second one was more of a professional that was at.
Right, and I guess it's not new for artists to revisit old works. I mean, for artists it does tend to happen. Like they put out like an initial work, and they're more or less pleased with it, at the time. But then time goes on, and then they're thinking about it, and then they decide to revisit that particular work and try to improve on it. And I mean, I guess like the only thing that was improved was the technology, and and I think, and I would say like a little bit of the acting too, because the 1930s one, the acting was a little bit, it was kind of like appropriate for its time, but I don't think it was the best, even for the standards of when it came out. I think the acting was just a little bit below um, what we now kind of come to expect, especially from a Hitchcock movie.
Right. I would say in the case of uh it's tough because I actually did like the 30s version quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But in one sense there was one actor to me that stood out obviously in the 30s version that I kind of wish that didn't quite cross over into the 56 version. I felt like the bad guy in the 30s version was better than the 50s version.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. All right. Just a quick synopsis of the film, or for both films. It follows this. Well, like the 30s one was more or less. How would you describe him, Robert?
So in the case of both films, you have a couple who is away in the 30s version. They're away at a I don't know if it's some sort of like Olympic or some sort of Winter Games competition,
Mm-hmm.
and in the 50s version, it's a family that is on vacation.
Right. Yeah, and they're in.
Um,
Funny
so,
enough, they're in Casablanca.
yeah,
Yeah, they're in
exactly.
Morocco.
Yep. And in the 30s version, they're in Switzerland initially to start off with, and they meet a guy by the name, and the guy that they meet in both movies is the same. It's Louis Bernard is the guy that they that both
The
that's met
character
in
name. The
both
character
films.
name.
Yeah, Louis Bernard, and it turns out that Louis Bernard is a spy,
Mhm.
and the Louis Bernard is a character that befriends both couples, and
But I think in the 30s one, there was like a more of like an established relationship, whereas in the 1956 one, it was more like they happened to meet each other like on the bus.
right. But it wasn't, from what I read about the 30s version. It wasn't that. And we have to remember the 30s version. The movie is an hour. It's really short.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
The 1930. The
so in the 30s version, Louis Bernard, they met him at that competition, but they had like a little bit of longer time to get to know one another. Whereas
right.
in the updated version, yeah, it was kind of just a happenstance meeting on a bus.
Hmm. Right.
And so, anyways, Louis Bernard, who turns out to be a spy, is killed by another group and he passes along information that he has regarding an assassination attempt that's going to happen in England. Both of them end up in England
Hmm.
uh, at a music hall, and in the course of they're both are trying to get in contact with the consulate to share this information. They both have a child that's kidnapped,
Hmm.
and if they say anything, that's it.
Yeah, the child
they're
dies, and so
and so pretty much, it's in both films, like, you have, they're trying to A, figure out what the hell's going on, and B, trying to save their child. And that's kind of like where the premise of both films. However, you whereas the 30s version is very like quick paced, like there's really no time for rest.
right. It's yeah.
Whereas
There's like very little. Everything is set up like really quickly. You know,
right,
imagine you go to a restaurant and like they sit you down, they put the menu in your laps, and like they circle around your table and they come back and they take the menus away, and then like before you even had time to order anything, and then like they take the menus away and then they bring you the food, and like it's like this constant like quick like revolving where you don't really know how everything is supposed to like really line up, but it just happens and you just kind of roll with it.
right. And so whereas the 50s version, you definitely get a little bit more in depth with the relationship between all the characters,
Mm-hmm.
and you get a little bit more information, and
And
I
you
don't know
get
if it necessarily aids in the storytelling, but it definitely um, I don't know. I didn't hate it. I thought I felt like a lot more was added in the second one, albeit with
right. The extra time definitely lends itself more to like you really feeling like the anguish of the parents when they lost their kid, and then
right.
like the father as he is going around trying to figure out like the mystery and like and trying to root out the spies as a
You were given more time to feel like kind of the tenseness of the situation
mhm,
in the remake.
right. Mhm.
So what would you say? Do you um, what did you like and dislike about both films?
Well, I think for the 30s version, um, I definitely liked. I don't know. Kind of contemporary. It was. Again, it was like one of those surprise films that from Hitchcock, where it's not like one of those like weird suspense thrillers that you more associate him with, and more of like a popcorn kind of movie.
Right.
And like and the idea and like and just finding out that he's been doing it since since the 30s, that's even more revolutionary, because he did because we like a couple weeks ago we saw North by Northwest, and I thought that was like a and I thought that was like a big like kind of like summer popcorn kind of movie also. But then to find out that he's been doing like those kind of movies since like the 30s, that's also very surprising, but still enjoyable. Um, for the 1956 one, I think I think I just like the updated feel of it, like better technology and things like that. Um, and also the pacing was a lot better in the 56 version.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and I think yeah, and like the things I disliked about the 30s one, I think again it's just kind of like technology. Like some of the audio was a bit off, and like the acting was definitely uh, was rushed too much, and and then for the what I didn't like about the 50s version was uh, um, I don't know if there's anything I really disliked about the 50s version, um, or to the point where like I have to mention it like because it bothered me so much. So I guess there wasn't anything really I disliked about the 50s version per se.
Hmm.
What about for
Um,
you?
one thing I liked about both movies is there's great attention to detail in both. In
Hmm.
the
Oh
in the
yeah, some
30s
of the
version,
shots.
right? Um, and the one thing in particular in the 30s version, Abbott, who's the villain in the 30s version, played by Peter Lorre, who I think we of all the movies we've seen as we've gone through the movie reviews, I think we've seen a lot of Peter Lorre in a lot of our films. At least
Yeah,
I
at
can
least like
think
some
of
of the older
three at
ones.
least.
It's funny because he looked fatter in that one.
Yeah.
Because like in like Casablanca or Roaring Twenties, he looked a little bit more trim.
Right. Yeah, we've seen him
But
like
in
in
this
like
one, he
four
looked like
films.
he looked a little thicker.
But and the little side note before I finish my thought is this is his first. That was his first English language film.
Hmm.
But anyways, going back to my uh, why there's great attention to detail in both that I liked. Where you have at the beginning, because we meet Abbott is kind of like he was just kind of the what we thought of as just being a random person in the audience that was watching the competitions, and you hear the chiming of his pocket watch,
Oh, that's
and
right.
throughout the film we hear the chiming of his pocket watch, and that's kind of builds up a lot of the suspense of like as we find out that he is a bad guy,
Hmm.
and it's like that chiming of the pocket watch like kind of builds up the suspense of what's taking place, and ultimately that's what gives him up in the end and he gets killed.
Mm.
In the 50s version we have the song Que Sera Sera by Doris Day, and how she's singing that with her son, and like they have kind of a back and forth,
Right. Oh, yeah,
and
that was the thing
that's
that
what
connects them, and then Yeah, and at the end, it plays a part in like their reunification.
Right. So there's it's things like that throughout the both films where there's those great attention to detail where we think of things as, oh, that's just a throwaway thing, and it's nothing important, but it really is very key to the story.
Hmm.
So I always like that where those things are these seemingly throwaway things that you don't think about, and then all of a sudden they play a huge part in the story.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, specifically what I liked about the 30s version, I thought Peter Lorre was a really good villain in the film.
Hmm.
Although apparently in this film his English was not really all that good yet.
Hmm.
And so he, because this was his first English language film, and so he had to phonetically learn his lines to be able to play this role.
Hmm.
I wouldn't have guessed that until, because he kind of sounds like he does in all of his films.
Right. Yeah.
uh, so I didn't know that, but no, I liked him as the bad guy. I liked him over the bad guys in the 50s version, the Graysons, or
Hmm.
whatever their name really was.
Right.
I just because Peter Lorre just has that look. He looked more menacing, more evil. He looked like he was more of a mastermind behind an assassination than the other
Hmm.
guys did. Um, as far as what I liked from the 50s version, yeah, I guess a little bit of developing the characters a little bit more, giving us more time to live in the suspense of what's going on. As far as things I didn't like in the 30s version, it was a little short. So like you said, you're kind of everything. It didn't feel rushed, but it's like, oh man, it's over already. It's um and yeah, there were some of the acting was a little weak. The female lead, who I forget her name is, like I don't know. I felt like her, and it's more of a nitpick than a dislike of the
Right.
film.
Yeah,
Uh,
as opposed to a very hard criticism, it's more of a nitpick.
yeah, I don't know. I felt like the female lead was a um little weak. But then, actually, well, to be honest, in both films, I kind of felt like the female lead was a little weak. I mean, Doris Day is great,
Hmm.
um, and
Yeah, come on, Doris Day.
right, yeah. I mean, but like
But
in this
interestingly
case,
enough, in true Hitchcock fashion, the female lead is a blonde in
oh
both.
yeah,
In
absolutely,
both.
both of them,
In
yeah. One thing that you see is in the case of in the first one, the 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 female lead, I'm forgetting her both her character and real name, but she's much more of a like kind of a tough woman.
Hmm.
She's a sharpshooter, which also going back to attention to detail, her being a sharpshooter who end up missing the shot because of Abbott's
Oh
watch
yeah, a
time,
distraction.
ends up becoming like she's the one that ends up saving the day, saving her kid,
Hmm.
because she shoots the assassin. But then in the 50s version, Doris Day, as she seems initially, like she seems very weak and and kind of in the way, but then all of a sudden she kind of like figures it out. Like she kind of figures out some of the details out of nowhere uh, before James Stewart's character
All right,
does.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The lead in the 34 was Edna Best.
Thank you. Yeah, Edna Best. Um, but yeah, and these are all just nitpicks. I don't really have anything that I disliked per se. But I think in both films, the attention to detail and like seemingly minor details that end up becoming a huge part of the film, I think is something I love.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think him going him being Alfred Hitchcock going back and kind of going back to remaking this movie. I think it was just to give us a better chance at dissecting the story, because the story itself it's a great premise.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps you on your toes, and it just gives us more time to envelop ourselves in the drama, in the intensity of the film, and gives us a better chance at feeling the character's anguish over what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely we're given more of a build up in the theater scene, which is where the assassin hits. It's some of those things that we get in the remake that we don't get in the original, and I think it could have been maybe funding of the film. It could have been time constraints. It could have been technology. It could have been a lot of things, and he felt like that this story was good enough that it deserved a relook at it and a remake.
Mm-hmm.
And arguably, both films are both great.
Right. When I was looking up the movies to try to find and watch them, I also saw that there was a '97 version. I'm pretty sure it wasn't by Hitchcock, but now I'm kind of
Unless
curious.
he was a zombie.
Huh?
Unless he was a zombie.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm curious to see what that '97 version of the story would be. Like, would it be like a period piece, or would it like take place in like the modern time
Let's take a look.
that it was in? But I guess just
was that the title? The Man Who Knew Too Much?
Yeah, but it was just like 1997.
Let's see.
Again, maybe it's just that title, but then not the same story. But
Huh. I'll have to look that up, but that might be interesting to check out too.
mm-hmm. Yes. Funny. I think one of the only comedic moments in the '56 version where I literally laughed out loud was at the end. Was and I actually thought that was pretty hilarious because when Jimmy Stewart and Doris Day's character, they're leaving Morocco to go to London to go find out what this conspiracy was about. Some of Doris Day's character's friends came by and was visiting them, and they kept their son wasn't with them, and they made this excuse that he went to go and visit with some other people, and they so they kind of like take turns with the friends, and the Jimmy Stewart goes out and investigates. He comes back, but then Doris Day's already left, and then Jimmy Stewart goes out, and he's like, hey, don't go anywhere, we'll be right back. And so they leave, and then it comes to the end of the movie where they come back to the hotel, and you see their friends all slumped over, falling asleep with in their seats, and then they come the family comes back in, and then Jimmy Stewart has that great line. It's like, "Oh, sorry, we're late. We had to go pick up, our son." It's like,
We had
and
to
that's
pick up
how the
our
movie
son Hank.
ends. And it's like, wow, like the friends like stayed at their hotel room all that time waiting for them to come
Right.
back.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, because I was like thinking, man, if I was like one of the friends, I would have been like, man, where the hell are these people? I'm out of here. I got things to do, and I would have just bounced.
Yeah, it's
But yeah, I think like one of like the truly kind of comedic moments. It's funny that it happened at the end, but I think it was a good payoff. Especially because like, oh, our son is visiting some other people in town or whatever, and then they're like, oh, hey, we're back. We had to go pick up our son.
they weren't wrong technically.
Yeah, technically they weren't wrong. Technically they weren't wrong. They weren't lying.
I mean, sure,
All
we had
right.
to defend them from assassins, but hey.
Yeah, they had to go. Yeah, they had to go pick him up from assassins, but yeah, they picked him up. All right. Rating time. Okay, 1934, 1956. Go.
34. I'm gonna give 3 stars, and the 56 version I'll probably give a 4-star rating.
Okay. All right. For me, 34 gets 2 stars, and 56 will get it's 3.5 stars.
Ooh, kind of a lot lower rating than I expected.
Yeah, I mean, I like it fine. It's just yeah. In terms of Hitchcock films, it just wasn't my favorite.
I can see that. Yeah.